Check 1, 2. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a... Yeah, I'm live, by the way. So check 1, 2, check 1, 2. This is Bob the Canadian. Let me go here. I am talking to Jen while I'm trying to start a live stream, so hopefully you don't mind. I'm watching myself on the screen. I'm saying to Jen that I'm live. So anyways, I'll start in 42 seconds. Sorry, hopefully this all goes well. We'll start in 30 seconds, and this lesson will be about kitchen action verbs. That's a good way to check to make sure the live stream is working properly, is to have Jen come. She was just asking if she could start the van outside, whether the noise would be in the live stream, but it won't be. So we'll start in 10 seconds. Hopefully you are ready to learn a little bit more about the kitchen. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about kitchen action verbs. Now, I did do an English lesson about the kitchen a while ago. It was a popular lesson. In this lesson, though, I'll look at specifically the verbs we use to talk about the things you do in the kitchen. Now, if you're someone who doesn't cook or bake, you should still watch this lesson. I will be using a lot of very common English verbs, a lot of common English words that we use when we're talking about things we do in the kitchen. This isn't just a lesson for cooks and bakers and people who love preparing food. This is a lesson for everyone who has ever gone to the kitchen to get a snack, who has ever looked in the fridge for something to eat late at night. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about kitchen action verbs. I think you'll enjoy it. Before we get started, I do want to just double check to make sure everything is working. I'm still laughing at my intro. I don't know if Jen knew that I was already live, but hey, that's how live works, right? Sometimes little things happen that you aren't expecting. Anyways, good morning to Key Park, Freddie Wolf, Sis, Lolly, Tony, Vitor. If I scroll back, I know Freddie Wolf is here as well. Hussein, Wanda Prado. Let me scroll back, and CS team as well. Good to see some familiar faces. If I could ask my members to be super kind in the chat to people today. Dave is busy, so we don't have a moderator. So hopefully things stay calm. I will keep my eye on the chat to make sure as well. But yeah, again, a lesson about kitchen action verbs. Sometimes when you're learning a language, you think because you don't do a certain thing, you don't need to learn those words, but that's not true. If you don't cook or bake regularly, you should still learn these words. I think it's a good idea. Hi to Noriko as well, Anna, and everyone else who is in the chat. Good to see all of you. Remember, use the chat for fun English conversations. So let's say Tony wants to chat with Key Park. You should have a fun English conversation together to practice your English. Let's see, what else should I say? If you have a question, please use the link that Nightbot will share. And I think if you do this, if you type that, then Nightbot will share the link as well. And the link, of course, is in the description below the video. So if you do need to ask a question about the lesson, I'm going to be very strict this morning. If you submit a question that's not related to the kitchen, I will not answer it. I will skip it. So anyways, let's get this lesson started. I think it's time for us to talk about kitchen action verbs. Let's go. Oh, hi to John Wedge too. I see John is in the chat. Very cool. Slice. So when you slice something, you need a knife. And you use the knife to make relatively equal size pieces. So this person is slicing a watermelon. They decided they needed a knife because they were going to slice a watermelon. they would use it to make those things, which are called slices, by the way. So you can eat a slice of watermelon. The most common use of this verb is probably when you talk about bread. You buy bread and then you slice bread with a knife. And then the piece that comes off is called a slice. So another one of those English words that works as a verb, to slice, and as a noun. That was last week's lesson. Not all of these work this way. Dice. So when you dice something, it's usually a vegetable. And when you dice it, if you look closely, the person is making tiny little cubes out of it. Or I was going to say squares, but technically they are cubes. So when you dice something, it's usually something like carrots. It might be something like celery. You're trying to make really small, uniform size pieces or cubes. Usually you dice carrots before you put them into boiling water to make soup. But yes, often you will dice something. Sometimes we dice our potatoes into really small cubes before we put them into soup or something like that. And then there's just the general verb cut. When you cut something, you get a knife and you make it into smaller pieces. There's no other real way to describe it. Again, cut is the general term for anything you do with a knife. So slice and dice, and I'll talk about chop in a minute, are all a little more specific, but you can use the word cut for almost anything you do with food with a knife. You're going to cut up some vegetables. You're going to cut up some fruit. Notice I put up there. I'm turning it to a phrasal verb. But cut is just, the generic or most used version of it. And then we have chop. So when you chop something, it just means to cut it into pieces. And it's not like slice, where when you slice, you get a slice, or dice. When you dice, you get cubes. When you chop, you're just cutting it up into smaller pieces. So you can chop some carrots. You can chop up some celery. I think we do often add the word up to it. I'm going to chop up some carrots, chop up some celery, and start to make soup. If you make pancakes or anything else in a frying pan, at some point you will need to flip the pancake. You cook one side, and when that side is done, when it has turned brown a little bit, you flip what's in the frying pan or on the griddle. These are pancakes, a fairly common breakfast food. I shouldn't say that. It's more like a weekend breakfast food. Oh, let's make pancakes. But you need a spatula, what I also call an egg flipper, but the real word is spatula, and you would use the spatula to flip whatever you have. If you fry an egg, at some point you need to flip the egg so the other side will cook as well. And then if you have ever made bread, part of the bread making process is that you need to knead the dough. I just used two different English words there. You need, N-E-E-D, like you have to, knead the dough. So this is when you work the dough with your hands in order to kind of stretch out the flour in the dough. It's important to knead the dough because it creates a better bread at the end. So if you've ever made bread or any kind of pizza dough or cinnamon rolls, at a certain point, you need to knead the dough. There I am using both words again. Definitely when you are making bread, you would knead the dough. And if you've ever eaten cheese, you probably have used a grater to grate the cheese. So the tool is called a grater, a cheese grater, and you use it to grate the cheese. You run the cheese over the grater, and it makes little tiny pieces of cheese. You can see them falling out the bottom. It's very common when we make pizza, we will grate the cheese, and then we'll put grated cheese on the pizza. Notice I'm using the verb grate, and I'm using it to describe the cheese as well as the tool. So you grate the cheese with a grater, and then you put the grated cheese on the pizza. And it does soften to a D sound. Did you hear that? Grated cheese, grated cheese. It's a little bit of a T sound as well as a D sound. If you have ever eaten potatoes or carrots or a banana, one of the things you will need to do is you will need to peel it. So you get a potato peeler or a knife and you use it to peel your potatoes. The skin of the potato is not yummy. In fact, I don't really like potato skins. Some places people do eat the skin. If you have a baked potato, often the skin will still be on it, but sometimes the potato peel or the skin, we use both words, by the way. I think we call it a potato peel before it's cooked, but if you cook it, it's a potato skin. Interesting. But yes, you need to peel things. Sometimes the outer part of a vegetable is not as yummy, and so you peel it and you eat the inside. And of course, the basic verb wash. Sometimes you need to wash things before you eat them, especially fresh vegetables. If you're going to eat something that's fresh or uncooked, you will often wash it before you eat it. We wash our lettuce, we wash our celery, we even wash our carrots before we eat them. It's just sometimes a good idea. There might be a little bit of dirt on the vegetable. We definitely wash our mushrooms. I don't have a picture of a mushroom. Mushrooms will often have some dirt on them, so it's always a good idea to wash them. And you know, rinse is very similar to wash. When you rinse something though, you definitely are not using soap. When you wash vegetables, you don't use soap either, but the word wash in English can mean that you're using just water or water and soap. In this case, it's just water. But if you use the word rinse, it means just water. If I rinse something off, if I rinse the tomatoes, I'm not using any kind of soap. I'm just using water to make them cleaner, to maybe remove a little bit of dirt or other things that are on it. Now here we've jumped all the way to the end of making a meal and we now have to scrub something. So scrub is when you wash something, but you use a sponge or a brush, and it has an element of being difficult. Like you really have to push hard when you scrub something. When you have a brand new frying pan, when you clean it or wash it, everything, it just goes really easy. But when you have an old pan, sometimes you have to scrub it to get it clean. When you scrub something, you use a brush or a sponge to vigorously wash it. And then of course we have cook. Let me go over these for a sec. We have cook, we have bake, we have fry, and we have boil. And I will go back to those. When you cook something, this is just the general word for making food. Usually also when you're using a stove or oven. Like I'm going to cook something. I'm going to cook some supper tonight. What are you having for lunch? Just sandwiches, or are you going to cook something? When you bake something though, it usually goes in the oven. You bake bread, you bake a pie. Not meat though. Generally, when you put meat in the oven, you are roasting it. Or we might even say just cooking it. I'm going to cook a chicken. But when you make a pie or cookies or bread and you put it in the oven, we use the verb to bake. And then fry is when you use a frying pan, which is a shallow pan. So you fry an egg, you can fry bacon, you can fry some sausages. Whenever you use a frying pan, we use fry. And then boil is simply to bring water to a high temperature so that it starts to bubble. It starts to boil. But hey, let's get to some questions here. I haven't done questions yet. I do want to say hi to a few people who have shown up. Hi to Unsel and Ario and Harry300 and Ralph. And Eugene is here from Etobicoke as well, and Noriko. But I think I said hi to Noriko already. Let's see here. People are asking about the link in the chat. Let me see. I think if you do this, I'm not sure if you guys are able to do it, but I think that will make the link pop up. Let's wait a second, see if that happens. I think that's how it works. While we're waiting though, let me get a question on the screen. I don't have a lot of questions, maybe because Dave isn't here. popping the link in. First question from Henry. Hi, Teacher Bob. How often do you grill burgers on the grill? So we wouldn't use griller. We would use grill or barbecue. Are you a burger guy? Thank you. So we do have a barbecue. We don't use it in the winter, but in the summer, spring, summer, and fall, we probably barbecue once every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. We make either hot dogs or sausages or hamburgers, and I'll eat all three. I like that. I like that kind of food. Coraline in the chat says, what is the difference of sound between need and need? There's no difference. It is pronounced exactly the same. And so, yeah, if you guys, I think you are able to do this. If not, I'll try to remember to do it once in a while. But if you type that with the word link, it will pop up. And the link is also in the description below. And you can always scroll back and find the link as well. Let's see here. Next question from Torres. Hi, my dear Teacher Bob. Here's my question. What is the most upset kitchen action for you? Thanks for your answer. Love your content for years. The thing in the kitchen that I do not enjoy doing, I don't like grating cheese. Often when we make pizza, let me find the slide for that for a second. I'll just pop it up if I can find it back. I don't like grating cheese. I don't know why. Often when we make pizza, Jen will grate the cheese for me. So yeah, that's one thing I do not like doing. I do not like grating cheese. I will do it, but yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do. Trypto Pal says, hello, Mr. Bob. Hi to you too, Trypto. Thanks for being here. And then we have a question from Fabian. Hi, Teacher Bob. Thank you so much for this amazing English lesson. I'd like to ask you, what is the difference between grill a piece of meat and fry a piece of meat? So when we say grill, we are using a grill or a barbecue. We usually do not grill something in the house. We usually go outside. We have a barbecue, which is a cooking appliance that we have outside that has bars across the flames, and we will grill meat on the barbecue. So, and then fry, you would use a frying pan. So in the winter, I would fry a steak in a frying pan. In the summer, I would go outside and grill a steak on the barbecue or on the grill. That is the difference. So folks, we're going to keep going with the lesson. Let me just have a sip of water here. Eugene says, I just cooked green onion with eggs, with egg cake. Oh, that sounds yummy. John says, don't forget to give a thumbs up. Thanks, John. Yes, please do that. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to get back to the lesson. I was going to read Ralph's comment, but it seemed a little bit extreme. So it sounds like his wife got injured while grating cheese. Yeah, I'm always worried about that when I'm grating cheese as well, that I'm going to hurt myself. But hey, let's get back to the lesson. So when you have water boiling, there are little bubbles coming out of it. When you have something like soup or stew where it's on the stove and there's just little bubbles coming out, you've just brought it to a boil. And when you let it sit at that temperature for a while, we say that you are simmering the soup. So often it will say, bring the water to a boil, add all the ingredients, and then let simmer for 25 minutes or let simmer for 30 minutes. Simmer is just boiling very, very gently for a period of time. And you will often simmer things like soup. Like I can see this big pan at the far end. He's probably decided to let the soup simmer for a while. So just a light boil. Some of you might steam your food. Jen and I have a device called a steamer, and we will often use our food steamer to steam broccoli. We'll steam different kinds of vegetables with it. Sometimes we'll use it to steam rice. Sometimes we'll use it to steam corn, like in this picture. But it basically, the bottom has water in it, and the water boils, and then steam goes through the food. It's a yummy and easy way to cook food. I think this is an interesting one. So listen closely. You use a toaster to make toast. When you have bread and you want toast, you need to toast the bread. So there's the verb. So in the kitchen, I will often grab 2 slices of bread and then I will toast them. I will put them in the toaster, push the toaster down. When it pops up, I will have toast. So the action of converting bread into toast is the verb to toast. I'm going to toast some bread later today, and I'll probably have an egg sandwich. Now, with this one, you might think to yourself, Bob, this is a lesson about verbs. Why do you have the word microwave with the picture of a microwave? Well, this is also a verb. In English, you can microwave your food. You can say, I'm going to microwave this slice of pizza because it's cold. I'm going to microwave this plate of food. Sometimes when I come home from work, it's late and Jen and the kids have already eaten. And then I will microwave the plate of food that Jen has made for me. I will put it in the microwave and go beep, 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 beep. There's your sound effects for today, and hit start. So microwave can be used to talk about the thing, as well as it is also a verb. You can microwave something. So a very simple verb, mix. Sometimes you need to mix the ingredients. If I was to make cookies or muffins or pancakes, I would put the ingredients in a bowl and then I would mix them. You might need to mix by hand. This person is mixing by hand, but you can also mix using an appliance called a mixer, which has 2 beaters that spin really fast and it goes. So when you put ingredients together in a bowl, sometimes you need to mix them. And the difference between mix and stir is usually something you do quickly, sometimes while you're cooking. So they're kind of interchangeable, but here's some good examples. If I was making something, I would mix the ingredients together. If I was frying something, I would stir the things in the pan. Another good example, when I put sugar in my coffee, I stir my coffee. So there is a slight difference between the two. They do have slightly different usages, but both of them mean to combine ingredients together. Add. So I added this one. I just used the verb add to talk about add. I added this one because it is a common instruction on a recipe. It will say add all the dry ingredients together, or add 1 cup of water and stir. Add 1 cup of milk and mix together thoroughly. So add simply means to take something that's not in the mix, that's not in the bowl, and add it in, put it in. To blend. So you can blend things together as well. Generally, we use this word when we're talking about this appliance. This is a blender. That's when you put a whole bunch of things together and then you push a button and it goes, and it uses sharp blades in the bottom that spin really, really quickly to make it all uniform. If you like drinking smoothies, that's when you put some frozen frozen fruit together with maybe some yogurt and a little bit of water or ice, and then you blend it together and it makes a really, really nice cold drink. Scramble. When you eat eggs, sometimes you will scramble them. We generally only use this verb to talk about eggs. You put eggs in a pan and you keep stirring them as you are frying them, and we actually say you are scrambling the eggs. I'm going to scramble some eggs this morning. Does anyone want some? What kind of egg do you want? I'll have a scrambled egg. Okay, I will scramble some eggs in the pan for us and I will fry them. So notice I'm using scramble and fry together. And strain. When you strain something, it means that there's probably a liquid that has some bigger pieces in it, and you don't want the bigger pieces. So you pour the liquid through a strainer so that you can strain it. I'm trying to think, when we make chicken broth, we pour the chicken broth through a strainer because we only want the liquid part of it. So when you make broth or chicken stock, you cook all of the chicken that's left over in a big pan for a number of hours, and then you will strain it because you just want the liquid part of it. So again, the device they're using here is called a strainer, and they are pouring it through because they want to strain the liquid. Hey, we're going to go to members only chat. It's a little early, but remember, I am trying to do these lessons a little quicker. Not trying to talk quicker, but I'm trying to get them done in about 50 minutes instead of an hour, because I do have to go to work in a bit. So if you have a question and you are a member, you can ask it directly in the chat. I'm just going to look at the chat to make sure everything looks good. No one is alerting me to any problems in the chat, so that's good to know. I notice Mode Ags isn't here today. Mode usually helps out a little bit when Dave is not around. So thanks to the rest of you who are doing that for me. That is awesome. Let me see here. A little tickle in my throat. Let me have another sip here, and I might have to cough. I'll go over here to cough. Sorry about that. Okay. So question here. Let me get it on the screen. Now, Natalia says, "Hi, my dear teacher Bob. I have just a technical question related to frying. How do you say when you want to spray the oil drops for cooking? We spray the pan. Before I fry eggs or before I fry something, I spray the pan with cooking spray. We also just call it Pam here because that's the most common brand, but you spray the pan. Yes, you say to yourself, oh, I don't want the food to stick while I'm cooking it. I'm going to spray the pan. That's exactly how we say it. Gabriella says, hi, Bob. How do you pronounce these two? Flour and flour. They're the same. Yes. So you use flour to make bread, and you might like to smell a flour if it has a nice aroma to it. Flour and flour. Let me do one more question from the forum, and then I will jump to the chat for members. John Francis, what would be the name of a person who's grating, that's using a grater? I know that, I don't know if that's even a word. Anyways, you can help me. You would probably call it the grater. The person who's doing the grating, if that was their job at the factory, that grated cheese, they would be the grater. So the grater would use a grater to grate cheese so that you have grated cheese. That's how you would say that. I don't know if that's officially a name, but that's what we would say. Okay, to the chat. John Wedge is saying hello to John Francis. Two Johns. Lolly Lolly says barbecue is not my cup of tea. I don't mind barbecuing. Like, I don't mind going outside and cooking stuff on the barbecue. But there is a type of food called barbecue that you can eat here. It's from the southern United States, and it's a little too spicy for me. So there's the action of using a barbecue is called barbecue, but also there's a type of food. And Musa, hello, Bob. I'm back after a very long time. I saw that this morning, Musa. I saw you saying hi early before the chat. Good to see you. My iPad was almost hacked the past few months, but now I'm back. Good to see you. Thank you so much for hanging out again. Eugene from Etobicoke says milk and bananas for breakfast. I actually had a banana for breakfast this morning, Eugene. It was the first thing I ate today. Key Park says, I'm trying to bake muffins nowadays. I want to make them more soft and fluffy. So one of the ways to make things more soft and fluffy is to use white flour and some sour cream or milk in the recipe. Usually makes things a little fluffier, but I'm not sure if you live somewhere where milk is a common product. I know that it's not common around the world, but it can help with that. Wanda, hi, Teacher Bob. What's the difference between strain and filter? Thanks a lot. So when you strain, I think the holes are bigger. When you filter, you usually use like a coffee filter. or a piece of fabric or paper that lets very little go through. When you strain, it's more like a window screen. The holes are bigger. So I think it's simply a size difference. Like I would strain something after I cooked it to like chicken broth, but I would use a filter to make coffee, a coffee filter. Musa talking to Lolly, saying very good. Freddie saying, salut chef. What are the meals do you prefer to cook, or which one do you succeed with the most? By the way, aurions-nous besoin d'un testeur de repas pour rester en vie? Alors, no, I don't need that. But my favorite thing to cook, I like making pizza. I like eating it, but I also like making it. I like making the dough. I do cheat a little bit though, Freddie. I use a bread machine to make the dough. Yes, no, but we don't need anyone to test the food. Marwanto, hello, Mr. Bob. Hi, Marwanto. Lolly says, I'm good too. Thanks, Musa. John Wedge, hey, Bob. After 2 weeks, I'm back. Good to see you. It was long 2 weeks because my coworker was on vacation. So I changed my schedule at work. No questions, just listening and having fun with you making sounds of things. Well, good to see you, John. Nice that you could fill in for a colleague that couldn't make it to work. In English, when we help out at work by doing some of someone else's job, we say we fill in for them. Now, it sounds more like you just changed your schedule, but you maybe were filling in a little bit too. Noriko, is garnish a formal term that is used in a restaurant or something? I always say put some herbs on your dish. I don't use the word garnish, but it's probably a common word. It means to add spice and flavor. You know, you garnish a dish. It even means how you make it look on the plate. You might put some fun stuff on the plate as you garnish it, some herbs or something. So I'm not a fancy enough cook to use the word garnish. Noriko saying hi to Musa and other people saying hi to each other. Let's see if we have another question here and we'll get back to the lesson in just a bit. Ario, hi Ario. Hola, Mr. Bob, how are you? Have you ever made soup and diced a carrot? Meat plus carrots is my fave. I call it meat soup. My mama made it for me very often on the weekend. Yes, I have diced carrots. I have diced celery. I have diced onions. I have made lots of different kinds of soup, beef soup, chicken soup, all kinds of soups. But I've never made soup with mostly meat and carrots. I've made it with meat, carrots, celery, onions, garlic, and a lot of other things, and noodles too. But no, I have not made that particular kind. I should find a recipe. BM, do you help your wife in the kitchen, and why do you like eating a lot? So, do I help my wife in the kitchen? Jen and I have different schedules. So I'm a teacher in the fall, winter, and spring. I go to work at a school, and Jen is home. In the spring, summer, and fall, Jen is busy growing flowers on the farm, and I'm home in the summer in particular. So our meal preparation is shared. Usually in the fall and spring, we just take turns making supper. In the winter, Jen makes supper almost all the time. And in the summer, I make supper almost all the time. So we just kind of share it. It's like we're running a little restaurant because of how many kids we have. And then why do you like eating a lot? I just like eating. It's yummy. Food's yummy. I don't like eating too much, but when I do eat, I do enjoy eating. I do enjoy good quality food. Yuri, hello, sir. Do you have a device called multi-cooker in your kitchen? I heard it's pretty handy to have one. Be well. No, we don't have an Instapot. We don't have a multi-cooker. We don't have any of those devices. Usually, those devices are good for making food for 2 or 3 or 4 people. But Jen and I are often cooking for 6 or 7 people. And a lot of times that just doesn't work very well for us. It just doesn't make enough food. Okay, from the chat, let's see here. Lolly, do you eat onion pie in Canada? No. It sounds yummy, but no, we don't. I'll make one maybe in the next week. John says, awesome, Bob. Thanks for the tip. No problem. Do you like eating frog legs and escargot, Bob? No, I don't actually like either. when I have escargot, sometimes I do have it. I like it with lots of cheese and butter so that I can't taste them. Noriko says to John Wedge, sounds like crazy weeks. We're glad to see you here again. Definitely. Freddie Wolf, what is the name of the tool that allows you to make an extra fine dough? Yeah, so I know people will sift their flour before they make something. I think that might be what you're talking about. It's similar to a strainer, but it's used with flour. You put the flour in and you shake it, and the very fine, light flour comes out with a bit more air in it. Lolly says, I'll give you the recipe for onion pie. Thank you. And John Wedge says to Noriko, it was. Now I'm good. Let me get a couple more questions from the chat, and we'll get back to the lesson. Noriko, morning, sir. I always say, can you nuke it instead of using the verb microwave, which is common. Yes, people do use that. It's kind of a funny verb, but people will say, I'm going to, oh, my coffee's cold. I'm going to nuke it for a bit. Or, oh, this pie is cold. I'm just going to nuke it to warm it up. I use the verb microwave. I'm just going to microwave it, but people do use that for sure. Ramanov, what is your favorite thing in the kitchen? My favorite thing in the kitchen, I really like toast. So I might say the toaster. Toast is super yummy, and I do really, really like having toast. Although I'm trying not to eat as much bread right now, so maybe I shouldn't say toast, but definitely toast with butter and jam. Or another treat is toast with butter, and we put chocolate flakes on it. I don't know if any of you are here from the Netherlands, but we like having, there's chocolate hail and chocolate flakes. Chocolate hail is like these really fine pieces of chocolate. I think it might be something that's common in the Netherlands, and because my parents came from there. So hagelslag, that's not an English word, by the way, or chocolate hail or chocolate flakes, all very, very yummy. But let me see, let me finish off. What is to cook meaning? I'm not sure. I do say to cook, right? From Eugene there. Maybe that's a word I'm not quite getting. Maybe put it in the comments, Eugene, and or send me an email. I'll try to figure it out. Freddie Wolf, no, I'm talking about flatten the dough. Oh, the rolling pin. Yes, I think that's what you mean. We use a rolling pin to roll the dough really, really flat, Freddie. So you would roll the dough with a rolling pin or flatten the dough. Let's see. Web says, I've heard that yummy is a child's term and better to use delicious or tasty. We use yummy. Adults use yummy. English is interesting where people often ask about formal and informal and what's proper. In North America, we are very informal. At work the other day, someone brought in cookies, and I would say 3 different people said, these are yummy. So it's definitely not a kid's word. Like, you can use delicious. That's totally a good word too, delicious and tasty. But adults definitely use the word yummy. Yep, I've heard it quite regularly. Okay, let me make sure I did everything right. I think I did. Make sure the camera keeps working. Have a sip of water. And we will finish off this lesson. To drain. So this is similar to strain. By the way, this is called a colander. And I think when you drain something, it usually means you're cooking it in water and you want to get rid of the water. So when I'm done boiling potatoes, I will drain it using a colander. If I'm cooking pasta, I will drain the pasta. I want to only have the food and not the water, so I will drain it. If you ever have had a cup of tea, you know that someone had to pour that cup of tea. Anytime you have a liquid, well, you can pour, well, let's keep it liquid. You have a liquid like milk or tea or coffee, and if you want to put it in a cup or mug, you will pour it. So you will take the big thing and you will do this, and then you will pour it out. This is the slide that made me make the poll last night. I don't know if you saw the poll on my channel. I was curious to see what hot drinks you guys like the best. Coffee won, by the way, I think by a long shot. To beat. So interestingly enough, this is also a word to use when people fight, like someone can beat someone up, but it's also a word we use in the kitchen. When you put egg whites in a bowl, you might beat them. That means to mix them very, very rapidly, okay? We do this usually with eggs, but you beat them. You can do it with a fork. You can do it with what's called a mixer, but when you beat something, it means to mix them rapidly. If you beat egg whites, eventually you get this really, really nice texture, which when you cook, we call meringue. Very yummy. Before you bake something, sometimes you will grease the pan. When you grease a pan, it means you put butter or some other type of oil or grease or lard in the pan. You might grease the pan with butter. You might grease the pan with margarine. You might spray the pan with cooking spray. So this is a similar thing to do. But often a recipe will say, grease the pan, and then you pour the mixture into the pan before you bake it. This is so that the food doesn't stick to the pan, okay? You don't want the cake to stick to the pan. You don't want what you're making to stick to the pan. So you grease it so it's slippery, and then it will come out of the pan easier. When you're frying something, you will often spray the pan with cooking spray. So the thing this person is holding is called cooking spray. You spray the pan for the same reason that you would grease a pan. You don't want whatever you're making to stick to the pan. If you use an old frying pan and you put an egg in that frying pan, it will stick to the pan. You won't be able to get the egg out. So you spray the pan so that it's slippery inside, I guess, so that food doesn't stick to it. Now, of course, whenever you make something in the kitchen, you need to measure your ingredients. So you'll have little measuring spoons on the far side or measuring cups. I wish I could point better. The big things are measuring cups. The small things are measuring spoons. And you will measure things out. In Canada, our recipes call for things like half a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 cup of flour, half a cup of brown sugar. So when you make something, you follow a recipe and you need to measure your ingredients. So we do use it as a verb. You need to measure your ingredients. If you put something like sugar in water, it will dissolve. So if you have a cup of water and you put sugar in and you stir it, eventually you can't see the sugar. It disappears, but not really. It's simply in the water and you can't see it. So when it says dissolve a teaspoon of sugar in a cup of water, it means to add it to water and stir until it looks like it has disappeared. Crush. So this person has decided to crush some garlic. Whenever you crush something, it's similar to squishing it. So when you have garlic, sometimes you will slice the garlic, but sometimes you'll just crush the garlic under the flat side of a knife, and then you'll remove the skin and put the crushed garlic in. Sometimes you will crush ice before you put it into a drink. There aren't actually very many things you crush, but if you crush something, this is what the action looks like. And then whisk. So when you whisk something, you use a whisk. So that kitchen tool is called a whisk, and you go like this with your hand. So sometimes you will whisk ingredients together. When you whisk, it adds a little bit of air, I think, as you're doing it. It's simply just another way to mix something. You will whisk it. And sometimes you need to weigh things. Jen and I don't cook this way. We generally measure things. We use cups and teaspoons and tablespoons. But some people will weigh their ingredients because this is more accurate. So you might weigh the amount of flour or you might weigh the amount of sugar when you are making something. And then we have spread. When you spread something like butter, so when you have a knife and you put some butter on it, you will spread it over your slice of bread or over your slice of toast, so that people Yeah, it is yummy to have fresh bread and spread some butter on it, and then the butter melts, and then a little bit of jam. It's one of my favorite things to eat. Oh, and then preheat. I forgot about this slide. Whenever you make something, sometimes you need to preheat the oven. You don't make something, stick it in the oven, and then turn the oven on. When you look at the recipe, one of the first things it will say is preheat the oven to 200 degrees Celsius, or preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on where you are in the world. When you preheat, it means you turn the oven on so that the oven is at the right temperature when you are ready to bake or cook your food. So you will preheat the oven. Well, that's a really big slide. Hey, so that is the end of the formal part of the lesson. I do have a couple questions left that I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to run off to work. So let me find those questions and get them on the screen. From Bean from China, Bob, your lesson is fantastic. Love it. Is bread and toast the same thing? Thank you. No. So bread is soft. When you are done baking bread, bread is soft in texture. Toast is when you put bread in a toaster and it makes it turn what we would say golden brown, or that's how it's golden brown when it comes out, and it's warm, and then the butter will melt on it. So bread and toast are technically the same thing. Like it's the same food item. It's just prepared differently. You eat the bread right out of the bag or right out of the oven, and then toast has to go in a toaster first before you eat it. Hey, that's it. We're done. We're done, people. So, wow, that was a little quicker than I expected, but that's good. I have to get to school early today because I have to set chairs up for a special thing that we're doing with my class, so I can get going early. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are awesome. Thank you for having good conversations in the chat. Remember, this lesson will come out in a shorter version. It'll be about 20-25 minutes long in a couple days. It is a great tool for you to listen to that or watch it again. Repetition is an important thing to do when learning a language. It's not exciting, but it is important. So do find the time to rewatch. What I do is I remove all of the questions and I just make a smaller condensed version of the lesson. So please do watch that. It's good for you. Thank you for hanging out. Let's see here. I'm just looking at the chat for a bit. Noriko says, great lesson. Musa says, it's hard to carve and remove the orange's meat. Oh yeah, the inside of the orange, while keeping the orange still round. Yes. I use a toothpick to carve it. Oh, cool. Very cool. John says thanks. Musa says thanks. Everyone's saying thanks in the chat. Thank you. Thank you for watching and hanging out. Thank you for making my YouTube channel something fun to do and successful. And I'm glad I can help you. And when you watch, you help me. So thanks for that. Anyways, I'm going to get going. You guys are awesome. Have a great Friday. Don't forget, Tuesday, there will be a new lesson. If you didn't watch last Tuesday's lesson, you should go watch it. I think the stories I tell are illustrated in a very fun way. So if you have a chance, please go do that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.